Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us today. In just a few moments, we're going to be joined by the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, Tim Doesher, to get his insights on what exactly is going on in these markets, what's going on with inflation, what's going on with trade and tariffs and everything in this country. But today we had a breakthrough. For the last 2 days, if you guys have been following this market, the markets have been up a little bit on the upside. Big fire sale happening last week. The Marxist Dems were cheering. They were so excited. They thought they finally got Donald Trump. 10 years they've been going after this man, indictment after indictment, impeachment after impeachment, and they finally thought they got him. They thought they got him to crash the economy. Now, we're not out of the woods yet by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're listening to guys like Jamie Dimon, who run JP Morgan, or some of these big wig economists or big wig politicians, they'll tell you that we're doomed. We're heading for trouble. We're heading for trouble. Donald Trump today making a massive deal, lifting the tariffs off of the countries who agreed that they're not going to retaliate against the United States at this time. He left the 10% baseline tariff in effect, but he pulled off any additional tariffs that would go into any other nation as long as they agreed they wouldn't retaliate against America. Now, one of them decided to be a tough guy, and it's none other than Xi Jinping in the CCP. They decided they're going to come after America with extremely high retaliatory tariffs. Donald Trump said, no problem. Now they have over 100% tariff on them. Now it's going to be very hard for them to sustain that. It's an economy in deep, deep trouble to begin with in China. That's a whole different episode. We'll talk about that. We can spend hours talking about that. But Xi Jinping's in a lot of trouble, and he's losing the confidence of his country. Donald Trump had some wise words from the Oval Office today about how we got into this situation in recent times. Take a listen.
I blame the people sitting right at this desk, right behind this desk, or another desk. You get your choice of 7. I happen to pick the Resolute. But I blame the people sitting behind in this chair or behind this desk for being stupid, incompetent, or not having courage. This should have been done years ago. This should have been done before Obama, in all fairness. Not only Biden, Obama. This should have been done many years ago. This started with the World Trade Organization, which was owned by China. It was owned and paid for by China. They didn't even have to do things. They considered them a nation that was undeveloped. They said they were a developing nation. Well, we're a developing nation too, if you think about it. Look at our inner cities. Look at what's happened. I think we're starting from ground zero there, right? So we're a developing nation too. No, I know it's a lot of people would take heat for saying it, but I blame the people sitting at this desk more than I blame China. If China can get away with what they got away with taking hundreds of billions and trillions of dollars right out of our pocket because our people here were stupid, they were stupid people. Maybe corrupt, I don't know. I don't know how you can be that stupid. How do you get to be president and you're stupid? But they certainly weren't courageous, and they allowed this to happen. And with Japan and with many other countries that took advantage of us. I mean, we had deficits with almost every country. I used to read these things. The first term I'd read them. I'd actually read the agreements. I'd say, how could anybody agree to this stuff? So certainly they were rough, and they were tough, and they were smart. And you can blame them, but I really blame the people that allowed them to do it. Because, if you could read first grade and you could read these agreements, you'd say, these are terrible deals. I actually used to say, who would allow deals like this to be made for our country?
Now, that's Donald Trump today in the Oval Office. I want to take a trip down memory lane, 1980s. Donald Trump had a very similar take on the very same situation we're in. Now, you figure I'm not going to do math in public, but 1985 is a few years ago, and Donald Trump almost like predicting this was going to happen. Take a listen to Mr. President Trump in 1985, then just regular Donald Trump.
I couldn't believe this last auto deal as an example. Here we are, we're sitting there. It's restricted in Japan. Everything's restricted. We're sitting, they can't come in. And all of a sudden, this country folds. We do the old fold now. I've never seen it.
That isn't the way the press reported it.
Well, no.
The press reported it that we had a deal.
And then all of a sudden it turned out that the deal turned out that it was not a good deal for us. And we had all the cards. I mean, it's not like we didn't have the cards. It's like, keep your cars out of here until you open up. That's all. Keep your cars out. And then the first hour was like, oh, we made this wonderful deal. After about 15 seconds after that, people realized we got duped. I just don't understand it.
What's wrong with us? I mean, I guess they said, well, this would hurt American car dealers.
You know, what's wrong with us? I don't know. They're afraid politically to make a little bit of a tough stand. That wasn't even a tough one. That was a no-brainer. You would have had the Japanese cars out for 19 and a half seconds, and you would have won every single point. It's the most incredible failure in negotiation that I've seen. But it happens all the time. I just don't understand it. So I would take a much harder stand. I'd take a much more difficult stand, I would say. Make a couple of enemies. I think I'd make a lot of friends, ultimately.
If the United States government took a firmer stand with foreign countries, would we be better off, or are we so much now a part of the nation of the community of nations that we can't really afford to offend anybody?
I think we'd be better off, and I think we'd be far more respected. I think the Japanese would respect us far more than they do. I don't think they have any respect for us, and they shouldn't have any respect for us because we are idiots when it comes to what's happening. I mean, look at dealing with Japan. I mean, just take a look at what's going on. I mean, they make hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and we lose money in deficits, and nothing happens. And they say, no, the Japanese are learning, and they're starting to open up. In the meantime, every second goes by, we're losing. I just think that people would have far greater respect for this country if we took a much tougher stand. It's really quite pathetic.
So most politicians, you can get a video of them saying one thing and being on one side of the issue, and then years later you get them being on the other side of the issue, and it's why politicians are always right. It's like weathermen, right? They're either going to be right 50% of the time or wrong 50% of the time. It's a pretty easy job, right? You get paid to be wrong. But Donald Trump has kept his stance pretty consistent on these whole issues. Now, those of you who aren't tracking your 401ks or IRAs or anything like that have tuned them out for the last few days, like myself. The Dow rallied about 3,000 points today. The S&P rallied about 500 points, and the NASDAQ rallying about 1,900 points. The S&P had one of its best days since just past World War II, 9.5% day for the S&P. So like I said, we're not out of the woods yet. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination. There's a 90-day pause on those tariffs, those retaliatory tariffs for those nations who have taken advantage of America. But Donald Trump giving them some time to, get their act together and figure it out. At least now they know that he's not playing games. The masks are off, the gloves are off. You're not going to take advantage of America much longer. I spoke with Jerry Storch, the former CEO of Toys R Us, last week. And for those of you who joined us, you had heard him say, everyone thinks America's rich. We're not rich. We're very poor. In fact, if you look at the debt to income ratio this country has, we have a growing debt like it's nobody's business. And nobody's ever seemed to want to take care of it. Nobody's ever wanted to seem to take care of the deficit. Nobody's ever wanted to look at the fact that America, the number one GDP nation, the most powerful nation in this world, on this planet, is a deficit nation. I mean, we import more than we export. How is that even possible? How do we get to this situation? Who is responsible for selling America? I want to bring in our guest today. He's the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, Tim Doesher. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
How do we get to this situation, Tim?
Well, it's funny because when I first came to Washington, D.C., about however long ago, every time you talk about China or decoupling from China or anything like that, it was we can't do that. No. Oh, God, well, we can't do that. Do you want your prices at Walmart to go up? Do you want that to happen? And do you want the consequences in the midterm elections to happen where the prices go blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, this guy comes down an escalator in Trump Tower in 2015. And 10 years later, this is the talking point that everybody is parroting. Decouple from China. We have to watch China. China. The president has and citizen completely changed the dialogue and discussion in this country to where we are now talking about going up against the world, going up against China. The world decoupling from China, not just the U.S., but the world, as we saw today, when Trump laid down the gauntlet and said, all right, if you don't retaliate against us, we're dropping the tariffs except on China. So you're with us or you're against us. And that is the message that he has said. And I believe that most of DC in a matter of 10 years has completely changed their tune. What an amazing turnaround, John.
Yeah, it was almost like it was a test, Tim. He put these tariffs on I guess they really started to hit last Thursday-ish, so it's been about a week and just under a week. And he puts them on, and he tested the waters a little bit. Mexico came back and said, we're not going to do anything. So-and-so came back and said, Australia came back and said, we're not going to do anything. Cambodia came back and said, please. And then now, just a week later, Tim, he looks at it and he says, all right, well, I've got, my experiment here. They said they're coming for me. Canada said they're coming for it. The European Union says they've approved. So-and-so says they've approved it. Are you getting the same interpretation as me? Is he was just feeling out the waters to see who's really serious about making change and who's serious about screwing America?
Well, look, Trump has made some bad business deals in his life. There's no question about it.
We all have.
However, let me finish with that. However, he's probably made, 1,000 times more business deals than the average leader around the world. So what Trump, I believe, has done is he has made the art of the deal with the entire world. He has called bluffs. He has made his case saying you've taken advantage of the previous leaders, of the leaders that came before me. Yeah. And they let you get away with it, but it's not happening anymore. And so these tariffs are coming. And next thing you know, you hear reports of 50 countries, 70 countries, however many countries saying, let's make a deal, let's make a deal. And you know what? This is exactly what me as a free trader, by the way, I am a free trader. I don't think tariffs are a good thing long term. I think they're anti-growth. I think they're a tax on the American people, 100%. But tariffs were never the end game. I don't believe for Trump. Maybe for some of his advisors they are, but not for him. He wants a deal and he wants growth. And we're seeing that right now potentially happen.
My favorite thing, Tim, is when you hear people talk about Donald Trump's fails, and this is not for you, but they talk about his failed business ventures. They'll always mention his casino in Atlantic City. For anyone from the Northeast who's been to Atlantic City, it's very hard to run a business there. Donald Trump was probably one of the few people who made it out alive, and by alive, I mean you take a loss on your tax statement, and this is not a Donald Trump thing. This is a U.S. tax code thing. You take a loss on your taxes, you lose a few $100 million, and you can write it off for the next 20 years. He's probably one of the only people who's ever used that to his advantage, because going to Atlantic City, which I spent a decent amount of time there.
I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, it's not a nice place by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got like a 95% retention rate with his businesses. And they'll talk about Atlantic City or Trump University. Oh, well, why don't you talk about the other businesses? Well, his dad gave him $4 million. Yeah, but he turned it to $4 billion. If your dad gave you $1,000, you turned it to 10. I mean, like, it's hysterical.
Imagine how much you miss if you're afraid to lose. And that is really the end goal here with the establishment here in Washington, D.C. Well, you can't do that. There's an order. There's a global order. There's this, like I was saying, the people that would tell me even at the Heritage Foundation 10 years ago when I started working there, that was the narrative. Now they are 100% on page with what President Trump is saying, because it's the truth, and it was a hard truth to tell. And you take a risk, and like you said, we are not out of the woods yet. We got to make these deals now. We got to cut the taxes now. We got to extend the Trump tax cuts. We got to continue with Doge. We got to codify Doge, make it the law. We got to stop spending as much, or else, as we can't keep selling our debt. We can't keep doing that. It is a bad move. So we actually have to go to work now, but you cannot replace that actually trying and making sometimes it is the right thing to do in spite of the risk. Yeah.
We're talking with Tim Doesher. He's the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. When we return, we're going to take a quick break here. When we return, I want to take up what it's going to look like post-tariffs. You'd mentioned you're a free trader. I'm a fair trader. So we're going to have a little debate when we come back here and see who wins. Folks, stay with us. We're coming right back with Tim Doesher for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Stay with us.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupting this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our spring percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Folks, we're back with Tim Doesher. He's the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Our good friend Steve Moore, Art Laffer, those good fellows over there, doing great work. Tim, what does it look like post-tariff world now? We got a 90-day pause. Are we going to see anything happen over these next 90 days, or is it just going to be another waste of time, or revisit this situation? The markets take a tank. We have no deal. Tariffs back on, tariffs back off. What's your opinion on what we see now in the next coming 3 months?
Well, there's a couple things that absolutely have to happen, and we hope it happens by no later than Memorial Day. And that is, if they do not extend the Trump tax cuts from 2017, the average American is going to pay $3,000 more in taxes. Absolutely. So we can talk about what are the tariffs going to do if they stay on long term. You and I can debate that. We can say, oh, well, businesses are going to come back. Well, here's what isn't going to happen. We have had a corporate tax rate at 21% that has brought back a ton of business. We cut the rate in 2017 from 35 to 21, 35 to 21. And we had, $1 trillion move back in investment from that move. All right. $0 has moved out of America since it came back because of the great business atmosphere that Trump created in 2017. Imagine if we cut that, any revenue that we generate from tariffs, we use that to cut the corporate rate down to 15%. Imagine what that's going to do to jumpstart businesses, even more businesses moving back into America. So a long way of saying is, post-tariff, post this deal, 90 days, we got to get that tax cut extended. We got to cut the tax rate, and we got to codify Doge and make sure that we're not only cutting taxes, but we're cutting spending and waste, fraud, and abuse in this government.
Before we get into free versus fair trade, I want to go a little bit further into something you mentioned, long-term tariffs. In my opinion, I don't think that's something we have to worry about, because the way that Donald Trump is using these tariffs, in my opinion, and by all indicators, it's to get an end result. It's not to cripple these nations. Maybe it is for China. I'm not sure. China deserves a lot of payback for everything they've done to this world, this country. 1 million people dead during COVID, millions globally. That's a whole different story, but they need to pay the price for that, in my opinion. They should have never gotten away with that. That's one thing. So the way I see him using these tariffs, Tim, is to level the playing field. And it's not, you mentioned long-term tariffs. I don't think there is a long-term tariff play. Now, there are tariffs that are long-term that are currently still on China from his first administration, but they're by no means 125% tariffs. They're to level the playing field. Are you of the same opinion as me that this is not simply to ruin countries, to ruin relationships? It's to simply level the playing field short term for a long-term deal?
Yeah, you and I are in agreement there. I think that's been well stated by Trump, saying that this is, we've got to go from them being up here, us being down here, to here. Notice how it wasn't we want to be up here. It's we want to be both down here. That's reciprocal low or no tariff. That's fair and free trade. Those are the two things that we need. We need fair and free trade. We cannot forget the free trade part of it, though, because we want to continue to do business. We talk about trade deficits all the time, and I know that's probably a buzzword here. But the trade deficit is what makes the dollar so strong around the entire world. Yes. People are buying our products, or they're paying us in dollars. That is a huge deal. They're buying dollars, they're paying dollars, all this stuff, because we have products that they have products that we want, and so they're accepting dollars. And that means that keeps us at an advantage. It keeps us. It's actually helped, in some ways, fund our out of control spending, keeping the dollar strong, which is bad, but it's also good because we can afford to, have some wiggle room in the world. So there are some positive signs to, what you call the trade imbalance, trade deficits. But like you said, leveling that playing field with tariffs, which are a tax, we have to agree on that. They are a tax. They do make things more expensive. You can argue whether the countries will take the hit or not, but in general, they will make prices go higher. No question about it. It's just a matter of how long that is and what we do domestically here to attract businesses into this country to start manufacturing here.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but there's a line between, I mean, depending on what the product is, invoice, MSRP, suggested retail price, or whatever, and there's their built-in, their built-in margins of profits along the way, whether it be from factory to retail. To suggest, and I'm not saying you're suggesting this, but some people have suggested if there's a 25% tax levied on something, it's going to cost the consumer 25% more. That's nonsense. It's not possible that you're going to be charging someone. I'll take, for example, cigars. I smoke a lot of cigars. It's probably why I'm sick as a dog right now. I see today that they're putting a 10% tariff on cigars from Dominican Republic, 18% tariff on cigars from Nicaragua. The average stick is not going to go up 18 to 10%. It'll be built in along the way. So will a cigar go up $1 over the course of whatever 6-month period? A $10 cigar go up $1? Maybe, possibly, maybe 50 cents. We saw in 2018, President Trump put tariffs and it made the prices of washing machines and dryers go up. Nobody's sitting there complaining about it. So the things that the tariffs are going to hit long run, what they look like right now is cars, luxury vehicles. How often do you buy a car, Tim? Now, I'm not saying, it's to justify it, but how often do you buy a car? How often are you going to buy a cell phone? I buy a cell phone probably every 5 years. I buy a car every 5 years. It's from what I see, luxury items, Porsche and Mercedes. Mercedes said this week, we're not going to let it hit the consumer because they can't. They know that the consumers are going to sit home and not pay it. The way I see it, most items that it's going to affect is luxury items, with the exception of things from China, but that's for a long play. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and so what I'll say to this is we know we just did a study. It's released on unleashprosperity.com. You can see, look, if these tariffs stay on automobiles, you're going to pay $4,000 to $5,000 more per car. In addition, if you don't roll back the Biden regulations, the green regulations Biden have, that's an additional $6,000 to $7,000 on cars. I'm sorry, that's a big deal. A lot of people buy cars. I'm from the Motor City. I'm from Detroit. That is the bread and butter of that city, but it is dwindling. It's not because of NAFTA. It's not because of tariffs. It's not or a lack of tariffs. It's because Michigan has bad policy. They have 50% renewable energy mandates. They have unions that continue to make business difficult for the auto manufacturers. And guess what they do? They move down to Tennessee, they move down to South Carolina, they move down to Louisiana, they move down to Alabama and Mississippi. You know why? Because it's better to do business down there. And so where you have Michigan going like this, you have the South rising again. And that's only in an economic sense because they have better policy. So it's easy to say, oh, it's because of this. This one thing is what is hollowing out Detroit. Well, I'm sorry. If you're a business, you're trying to build a business in Detroit, and you are forced to use union manufacturers or union workers and people based in the city of Detroit to build your building, I'm sorry, that's a bad way of doing business, and I'm going to choose somewhere else to do my business. So we got to be careful how we're talking about these tariffs and the impact that they're going to have. Prices are going to rise. No question about it. It's part of the reason automobile prices continue to rise. Bad union deals and more expensive production, which is why we got to be careful. And I want to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe everything's going to be done by robots in manufacturing in 20 years. There's no question about it. That's how this is going to be done. So we say we're going to bring these manufacturing jobs back. Okay, that's good. That's great. That's wonderful. But are they actually going to be building stuff anymore? Or are we reliving a dream from the past? I'm curious. Robots are here. They're here and they're cheap.
Yeah, certainly for the car industry, absolutely. I mean, they're already in use. I think Ford uses them a lot. GM here in America, absolutely. But there's still going to be jobs, Tim, that the American people are going to do. Building air conditioning units, Carrier was one that we heard about over the last few years. You're still going to have things like that. But it's going to be across the board. It's not just going to be in America where robots are taking over. So are we going to let Chinese robots take over and still get raped? Or are we going to let American robots take over and at least maybe get some of our money back? Now, I understand there's going to be jobs, Tim, that we can't bring back to America. I say this all the time, and I get heat for it.
Yes.
Textiles. I understand we're not going to ever be able to bring textiles back to America because it's way too costly. It's massively pollutant into the environment. Okay, I understand all that stuff, but let's ship our manufacturing down to South America. Let's ship our manufacturing instead of China. Why don't we go to Mexico? Why don't we try to help these people build up and I get a lot of heat for saying this, but I don't care because it's just the truth of the matter. If we can help these people build up their own countries, they won't want to come to America. They'll be able to live a life down in their own country. Why don't we ship our textiles and let them do it there? Because like I said, let's be honest, it's never coming back to America and we can't. So why don't we go to Honduras? Why don't we go to El Salvador? Why don't we go to Mexico? Ship everything from China down to there. And you know what? The shipping routes will be a lot damn cheaper. You'll be employing these people down in their own country and they won't want to come to here and we won't have to worry about 20 million illegals living among us. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that America is the best place in the world to do business. And as long as there's an America with a competitive tax rate, with low regulations, how about a solid rule of law? That's taken a hit over the last few years. Oh my goodness. You know, if you have all of that in place, we are the crown jewel. We are the alpha dog economy of the world. Everybody wants to do business in America. That's why they're choosing us versus China. Would you rather go to court in CCP or would you rather go to court in Rochester Hills, Michigan? Frankly, I'd rather go in Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Did you say court?
Court. Yeah.
Like criminal court?
Yeah. Or negotiating a business deal or a business deal that goes south with the CCP. You don't get to go to America courts. You fight with the Chinese Communist Party. And let me tell you something. If you go to war with the Chinese Communist Party, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. That's why our IP is being stolen. That's why they cheat all the time, because doing business in China is a huge risk. And we've just developed a system where we've just taken it over time. So yeah, I agree. We should build factories where it's advantageous, the comparative advantage. I believe that. It's a tale as old as time. And I think that we should, but we got to do it in the place that is most advantageous to America. And I think decoupling from an enemy, a military enemy like China, and maybe going with Mexico, who said, all right, we're here, we're doing business, let's make deals, let's make the deals better, is a good thing. And one more thing, I know I'm going a little long here, but let me just say this. I follow a journalist. His name's Charlie LaDuff. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, former New York Times journalist who moved to Detroit and just to cover the city because it was fascinating. And he immersed himself in the culture there. And he's been on the Ambassador Bridge reporting. He got on the Ambassador Bridge to report. And he's a center-left guy. He and I would disagree on most things. But when he starts talking about, okay, well, we have decent tariff rates with Canada on most things, not dairy, as President Trump points out. That's good. But what about the other stuff? What about the non-tariff barriers? What about the fact that Canada has universal health care and companies don't have to pay for health care? And American companies, think about the auto industry. A lot of their burden is healthcare and other benefits that we have to provide in this country because we don't have universal healthcare. That right there are the kind of things that we should be looking at, that we should be talking about in how we renegotiate deals, how we get back to the table and say, we want to do business with you. It's okay to have a factory in Canada. It's okay to move things back and forth across the border 10 times in order to make a cheaper car for consumers and a better car. That's fine. But we got to make better deals. And I think that President Trump is poised to do that.
Yeah, to anyone who wants to go test out the Canadian healthcare system, I invite you to go to Canada, become a citizen, and break your arm there and see how long it takes you to get a surgery. By no means is Tim, I think, advocating for universal healthcare in America.
No,
but just pointing out how expensive healthcare companies, and it's I mean, big part thanks to Barack Hussein Obama, who's made it impossible for healthcare companies to come in and bid. When I left Fox News and I came to do independent journalism with Lou, for me to get my own healthcare, Tim, I was 27 years old. It was $800 a month, $900 a month on Cobra. I was 27 years old with no pre-existing conditions, nothing wrong with me, a perfect bill of health, $800 a month. I mean, these people, these companies make it totally unaffordable. And my favorite thing was during Obamacare. You have to have insurance. But if you don't have insurance, we're going to fine you $1,500 a year. Well, if I had $1,500 a year, I would have just paid for the damn insurance. Like, what the hell world are these people living in?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. Try living in the UK. I did for a year, and I'm a type 1 diabetic.
Oh my
Healthcare has
goodness.
always been a thing. I had a serious medical problem. They lost my test results 3 different times. I was about ready to fly back to the United States when finally the situation worked itself out. And that is the risk that they take. That's the gamble that they take in the universal healthcare system. So by no means am I advocating for that. Just simply pointing out that there are big differences when we talk about other non-tariff barriers. And those are things that we should and can work out, I think, between our friends. And it's great to see that our friends want to do that with us, for sure.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that. You'd mentioned the dairy. A lot of things people don't realize. They have this quota type, which I still truly don't understand, but they have this quota type system. So when they hit a certain amount of demand or supply, the quotas can hit up to 200% on this and 200% on that and 100%. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen, but I think it's made to mess with people's heads. I want to take one more quick break here. We're talking with Tim Doesher. When we return, I promise you, we're going to take up that free versus fair trade. The other thing I want to take up is the fact that we are at 26%. We account for 26% of the world's GDP. China is a distant second behind us. Who really knows if that number is right? We haven't had a trade surplus in this country for 50 years. Think about how long this country's been going down the tubes. People think it's maybe the last 20 years, and a large part of it is Bill Clinton with the Belt and Road Initiative, as you heard President Trump say earlier in the show, to make these stupid deals, to give China, an emerging nation, all this power and free might to do whatever the hell they want. But I think it's been going on a lot longer than that. A trade deficit for the last 50 years. Make it make sense. Hopefully Tim can make sense of it when we return. We're talking with Tim Doesher. He's the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
Folks, we're back with Tim Doesher. He's the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Tim, before we went to break there, 26% of the world's GDP sits here, right here in America. China, a distant second. We haven't had a trade surplus in this country for 50 years, which means we're offshoring everything. We're relying on every nation for everything. And we saw it during COVID. We couldn't get something as stupid as masks and gowns. Now that we know the masks don't work, I mean, the whole hysteria was so wasteful. But pharmaceuticals, we offshore like 80% of our pharmaceuticals, China and India. I mean, we're not a producing nation anymore. And it's been like that, it seems, for the last 50 years. What's your thoughts?
Well, you mentioned pharmaceuticals, and you're correct. I mean, but why? Why aren't we? Why did we offshore them? I mean, a lot of our pharmaceuticals were made in Puerto Rico, and we know about Puerto Rico, the mess that they're in down there domestically. Again, it goes back to the point of what I was talking about earlier with it's not just the federal government. It is also the states and the territories that have issues. I mean, we know that they were just bankrupt and they were under a holding board to restructure the entire island. They're hemorrhaging people, hemorrhaging what employers are hemorrhaging workers. So they lost a lot of the pharmaceutical industry, kind of moved out there. Another reason, what about the Jones Act? You can't ship something from one American city to another American city without an expensive union ship.
Yeah.
You know, you're having people go all the way to Australia, ship something to Australia, and then Australia ship it all the way back to California simply to avoid the Jones Act. So, I mean, there's a lot of things there, especially if you're dealing with the pharmaceutical industry, that you kind of shrug yourself and say, Well, we're kind of doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so while we do have an imbalance per se, we're doing that for a very specific reason. It's to avoid the other costs of doing business here in America.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I want to turn to the free versus fair trade. Now, I've been saying on the show for the last few days, free trade is what I think has gotten us into this mess in the first place. We've been so worried about protecting against unhealthy competition, and we've been less worried about the actual trade barriers and the protection for the people who are selling products in here in America versus the people who are selling products over in Canada. We can't compete with the dairy farmers over there, our farmers here in America. We can't compete with some cattle farmers in Australia. I mean, I saw an interview last week that about the importing of meats from Australia and folks not buying it from here in America, where we have some of the best beef in the world. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Is free trade has gotten us in a lot of trouble if you think about it. And fair trade is what is sort of saving us a little bit. And this isn't for me. I've gotten all my economics lessons from the great Lou Dobbs. And anyone who came on his shows and talked about free trade, he was pissed. And he'd say, we need fair trade. And that's what Donald Trump, I think, has tried to intimate. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's just as you learn in law school, one of the most important things you can do first before anything while you're preparing is define your terms, stipulate meanings, stipulate terms. Okay, we agree that this means this. All right, we agree. So we can move forward on that. When you're talking about free trade, you're talking about the goal of free trade, which has been free traders for the last, 30 to 50 years or however long. It's been the goal of free trade, and they've just used the term free trade. True free trade is 0-0. That's what true free trade is. And we've never had that. We have never had that. It's always been some negotiation to work out this country's protection thing. Oh, Swiss wants to protect their chocolate industry. So we'll hit them. They're there, and we'll hit them here, and whatever. It's just that the U.S. has wanted to become the place that people invest in the most. So we've lowered our tariffs as a goal of attracting that investment. That's been the goal over time. But the problem with that is that, like you said, we've relied on the term free trade to sell what we're doing. But it should have been free-ish trade. And it's been kind of tumbling to the point where Australia, has the beef problem. And remember, we're only talking about beef. That's one issue. And fine, that's good. Yep. We should renegotiate that. That's fine. But New Zealand has great deals with us. And guess what? They're sitting there. I was just in Auckland. They go, what did we do to you? And I said, well, you gave us Lord of the Rings. That was really cool, and we really liked that. Thank you for that. It was really, really wonderful. Tariff free. But there are things that you do here to protect your industries. There are things that you do here to do that. And that's what we're trying to change the narrative to actual true free trade. Let's try it out. That's what Milton Friedman was talking about when he said free trade. It's going 0-0. You want to try that out? Let's go. Let's do it. And watch how much growth we see through that. I'm a free trader. That's what I want to see. I'm an idealist. I don't know if we'll ever see it. I hope we do. But what I'm really interested in is growth. And I'll tell you one thing. Our economy and our wealth has grown as a nation, no doubt about it, over the last 50 years. The middle class has risen. I don't buy the narrative that somehow we have suffered and that we're at a place of destitute poverty. We're not. That's just not the case. A rising tide lifts all boats. It's not perfect. But we've mislabeled what we've had, which is the goal of free trade instead of actual free trade.
So I get that, and I understand. The 0-0 thing just doesn't work with some nations, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you look at, I think Peter Navarro now I love to see Peter Navarro sparring with Elon Musk over this issue. Peter Navarro, a very good friend of mine, has the best interest of the country. Now, sometimes I wonder if Elon Musk does really have the best interest of our country or his pockets. And I think a lot of people wonder that same thing. the guy's got a lot of businesses across the world, and he imports a lot of stuff from China. And Elon Musk pointed that out, and Elon got very upset. But it's the truth. The truth is that Elon Musk can't run his business without China. He has nowhere to get batteries from. That's just one component of the car. But I think the country you mentioned was Cambodia, and I may be wrong. It was either Cambodia or Vietnam, where for every $1 we spend, we spend 15. So a 0-0 situation doesn't necessarily work there because they're not importing enough. What do you do in a situation like that? And to put it in layman's terms for folks, we're importing a lot less than they're exporting to us. So you have an imbalance there. What do you do in a situation like that?
Well, first of all, Elon Musk, his cars are the most produced in America cars, most assembled and made cars in America. We put a chart out in our daily email today that 100% Tesla is manufactured here in America. That's the dream. That is the dream. You talk about batteries being made in China. Okay, well, we have $12 trillion of critical rare earth minerals under our feet here in this country. Let's start digging. Yeah. Let's start getting that out. Let's start producing that ourselves. We can decouple. But why aren't we digging? It's because we won't give leases on the federal land to get this out of the ground. So there's that problem. Now let me just talk about this because you talk about the trade deficit. Did you know? And this is statistics. Did you know that the more you raise tariffs on somebody, that's not going to fix the trade deficit? In fact, that's going to increase the trade deficit because the more you increase, it's a fact. Every single time countries start exporting less, and that's because they're paying more. And so you have you're saying, logically, you think, oh, we slap the tariffs on them, they're going to send more back. It's going to be better for us. Well, in the end, no, it's not going to fix it. In fact, it's going to make that deficit even larger. And so we again did an item on that today in our daily email. You can read on it if you go to unleashprosperity.com. It's called the hotline. We do it every morning, and you can see all the numbers worked out there. That every single time tariffs are raised, the trade deficit increases. And so we got to watch out for that. We got to define our terms, as I said earlier, and we got to be sure that we're ready to take on the argument. Now, if you want to say, well, hey, we've operated under that for a long time, and we've had bad trade deficits because of it. Okay, you can say that, but politically, you've got to be ready. You got to be ready to hit that in the midterms if prices are continuing to raise, as I believe they will if tariffs stay on long term.
I don't think this goes into the midterms. I mean, they're ways away, and we have so much to look forward to. The Trump tax cuts, the corporate tax cuts, the personal.
But hold on though. But I'm sorry to interrupt you. But I'm sorry. We are still under the Biden economy of high inflation. We still have very high inflation from the Biden economy. So we started at a loss, and now we're even further down because we are shaking the world up. We need to get back up we need to recover fully from Biden before we even start going even further to quote unquote fix another problem, which we can again argue whether or not that's a long-term solution. But Biden really screwed us over economically speaking. And we haven't even begun to recover from that, as we saw with the last inflation number, which ticked up a little higher.
I mean, he's been in office less than 3 months. And this is what I tell everybody is that it's not going to get fixed in 3 months. It's probably not going to get fixed in 6 months. You need a little bit of time to fix this thing. But over the next 6 months to a year, we're going to have the corporate tax cuts renewed, which is going to drive companies through the absolute roof, putting more monies in their pocket, allowing them to hire more people, allowing them to reinvest in their companies, and so on and so forth. Okay. You're going to have no tax on tips. You're going to have no tax on overtime proposed and probably signed into law. The ultimate thing, which Howard Lutnick slipped out in an interview and said, is that Donald Trump ultimately wants no tax on people making less than $150,000 a year. I mean, what does that do for an economy when you're giving now I think the number is it's like in the 80 to 80 percentile for people who are making less than $150,000 a year across the country. Okay, if you take out if you take out New York and California and now Florida, the amount of people making $150,000 or less is substantial. So you give these people back now 20, 30% of their paychecks. What's that going to do to an economy?
Well, okay, so let's take this. So it's a great idea, and it would be very beneficial to families and to households making 150 or under. However, the counter to that is I've heard in order to enable that to happen, to pay for it, they're talking about a quote unquote high income tax hike, hiking the top tax rate to pay for that. I haven't seen the numbers on this. I have not seen the numbers worked out, but my sense is that those top earners we know are small business owners because people file subchapter S, and so their company may make $2 million in 1 year, and they file their tax return, and they're rich because they file it as individual because it's a pass-through entity. Okay, well, if you're going to raise the taxes on that $2 million business, that small business, that's way less that business has to invest to hire somebody to do all of the work that small business. I mean, small business drives our economy. No question about it. It's the beauty of America is that a small business can be successful in America. Look all around the world. They do not have the small business atmosphere that we have here in America. Thank God we are so blessed by that. But again, if you raise that rate, that's not going to hit just the millionaires and billionaires. That's going to hit the small businesses. And I want to make sure that we say, is it worth doing that? Killing those pro-growth tax rates that encourage business to invest in order to make sure that somebody doesn't pay a tax rate. You're going to have to maybe counter that point.
Did you see
but
that
I'm
number
skeptical.
somewhere? I haven't read that anywhere that's the case that it'll be on. The way I interpreted it from everything that I've read about it, it's going to be super high wealth individuals who are making money, not the small business owners of the world making $2 million. And $2 million, folks, when you bring it on a business, it's not a lot of money because when you boil it down to everything, like a restaurant owner who's grossing $2 million a year is probably only taking maybe $250 out of it, $300,000 a year after taxes and everything they pay. I don't think it's going to be hitting those folks. I think it's going to be hitting the people who are making.
Well, it's just remember that 5% of the entire population pays, about 50% of the taxes.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
All right, and that is way more than the small business owner. That is way more. And so, look, I am not a fan of raising taxes. I will never be a fan of raising taxes. I think that it's a good thing, a virtuous thing for people to, have some skin in the game. I think all taxes should be lowered, as few as possible. But we need low rates and broad base. That's what I believe is the most pro-growth tax policy that we can have. And look, if you can exempt, maybe you use the tariffs to pay for tax relief for those people. Maybe you do. I don't know how much we're going to be bringing in because, I've heard various numbers, and now that you pause tariffs, we're not going to be, bringing in that revenue. So again, we got to see the numbers, but I'm very, very skeptical of hiking rates, super high in order to pay, so fewer people have to pay taxes at the lower end. I think that everybody should have some skin in the game. I really do.
Yeah, but as Scott Besson put it, this is about Main Street, not about Wall Street anymore. The American worker.
Yeah, but I know a lot more people than Wall Street that would be their taxes would be hiked. I don't think that's a fair. I love Scott Besson, by the way. He's an incredible Treasury Secretary. I think he's going to be credited for a lot of these deals. I think he's behind the scenes being a power player in this. But I just disagree with that narrative. I don't think that this is just Wall Street. I think that's a mischaracterization.
Well, I mean, there's nobody surrounded by more billionaires than Donald Trump in this administration. So we'll see what happens. But
Scott Besson's one of them, by the way.
No, of course. And it's not a bad thing. I don't say it as a bad thing that someone who's worth a lot of money. It's a bad thing. It's a great thing, especially coming from nothing and making it to everything. I mean, you should be applauded for everything you've done to get there. It's the American dream, as you said, to get to that position. But there needs to be some sort of debt relief for the American people, the American family. You look at debt numbers through the roof, debt numbers for the elderly through the roof. I mean, there's no other way, in my opinion, to get there without starting to cut back for some of these people and give them the relief they need. Some of these people are paying 25, 30% on credit card debt. Credit cards maxed out across the board. We need to give these people some sort of relief. that's
well, we
that's
could
my
have a
opinion.
whole episode on price controls. I tend to be in the camp where we shouldn't have price controls and that we should be responsible. I mean, people at home need to stop acting like the federal government and just kind of borrowing, spending. And what they need to do is they need to demand from their lawmakers lower taxes, less regulation,
Yeah.
all this. And by the way, not just federal, state as well.
But
I think
Steve,
that's
Tim,
what we need to. Yeah.
I live in a state like New York, and you have property taxes are through the roof for an elderly person to pay $9,000, $10,000 a year on a house that they paid $50,000 or $60,000 for. That's now worth $800,000 or $900,000. You've got them paying property tax through the roof. I was talking with economist John Lonsky not too long ago. You look at some of the things that people are racking up on their credit cards. It's not Lululemon. It's not expensive dinners. It's utilities. It's bare necessities. And, if you're living in a state like New York, to tell someone to get up and move after they're, 80, 90 years old, they have their doctors here, they have whatever here, they're getting $1,500, $2,000 a month in Social Security, and they're paying $9,000 a year. That's not something that they can control. You can't ask somebody who's 85 years old to get up and move.
But they are. They are. 2 million people, over 2 million people have left New York over the last 10 years.
I get it.
It's a mass exodus out of there. But let me just respond to one thing that you said. Look, I am in no way of saying that we need to be hard on people. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is that we were not having this conversation in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Yeah. We were not having this conversation. We are having this conversation now because President Biden spent. Trump wasn't perfect. He spent as well. But Biden put us over the limit, and that caused rent to go up. That caused mortgages to go up. That caused groceries to go up. That caused energy to go up. That caused everything in this dang country to go up. And now we are stuck talking about how much people are putting on their credit cards because of one man and one man alone. That's Joe Biden. Yeah. And we cannot go like this to each other. Which we're on the same side on most things. We have slight disagreements on things. That's fine. Yeah. But we cannot lose focus of why we're in this position.
Just promise me you're not going to burn down my car tonight, Tim.
Do you have a Tesla?
I don't.
I won't do it. I'll spare your car, but I can't help myself if I'm walking down the street and just start burning people's cars down. Start keying it.
I'm not a hater on the electric vehicle. I'm just not there yet. I'm not. I drive a Jeep Wrangler that's all lifted up with the big tires. I'm not at the electric car thing yet. And you know what I have to say?
Neither is America, apparently.
No, last year, I was driving a very luxury car that I had gotten rid of, and I was tired of it. An oil change was $600. To change the brakes on it was $4,000. And I said, enough is enough with this damn thing, man. And I said to myself, I'm going to go buy myself a damn American car. And I was over at Lou's farm one day, and I drove his Jeep Wrangler. Lou drove an American car, man, all the money in the world, and the guy was driving a Wrangler. I used to joke. I say, a man's American. He's got USA in his email handle. And but I drove it, and I said, screw this shit, man. I'm done with this. I'm done paying $500 for an oil change. I go to Porsche, and I go take this damn thing back, and I go, I bought myself a Jeep Wrangler, and you know what? My next car is probably going to be another American car, maybe a Cadillac. I don't know yet.
Yeah, and it was either made in Illinois or in Toledo, Ohio.
What parts from Mexico?
And with parts from Mexico. But hey, like we said, they're making deals, so that's good.
Yeah, you know what? And I said I can't come out here and preach America first every day if I don't drive an American car. I'm not there on the American suits yet, but. Maybe we'll get there one day.
Hey, when you get a bigger contract for the Great America Show, that's when you can start having your clothes tailor-made in the United States of America. How about that?
I'm guilty of not doing that right now in America. They're made elsewhere.
Me too.
What?
Me too.
I'm not too trusting of an American. I don't even use an American tailor. I'm not too trusting. There's some things I'm not trusting of Americans. I won't eat Chinese food that's made by Americans, and I won't buy suits that are made by Americans. Tim, it was great talking with you today. You get the last word here as we wrap up. The floor is yours. You know, your outlook
Don't forget.
on this.
Yeah, look. Here's the bottom line. You know, as a free trader, you know, the talk about tariffs was always a okay. Well, we can't go that far because if we're there long term, it's going to affect growth. But when I pause and I look back and we see, you know, a deal maker is a deal maker. And I believe that President Trump is the best deal maker that has ever occupied an office of leadership around the entire world. I believe that President Trump will make great deals that get us to freer trade, but also fairer trade. I believe that 100%. And, you know, you said it at the very beginning. We are not out of the woods yet. We got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of, you know, squabbling here in D.C. Of course we do, as we always do. We got to pass the tax cuts. We got to deregulate. We got to be very bold with Doge, continue that. But I will say that this is going to be a moment where we look back and say, things changed because there was boldness and leadership. And I just want people to recognize that, whether you agree or not. We follow the leader here in America. He's all of our president. And we want the best for America because this is the greatest place to do business. This is the greatest place to live, and we are blessed to be here. So thank you, John. Really great conversation, and God bless you and the Great America Show.
I appreciate it. And Tim, thanks so much for coming on. One last point. I know I said to give you the last word, but I had just written it down here before I forgot. You had mentioned Trump spending, and it was no secret that Trump spent a lot. Now, COVID had a big part to do with it. It wasn't necessarily 100% his fault, but you know, COVID did play a big part. You know, I often wonder what would it be like if we never had COVID, and I think things would have been a lot differently. Trump would have probably stayed in power, you know, straight through. But you know what? We're here now, and we play with the hand we're dealt. You know, not the one we choose. Tim Doesher, he's the executive director for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Tim, come back soon. It was great talking with you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us today here on The Great America Show. Please be sure to join us back here tomorrow for The Great America Show, where our quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. And hopefully by tomorrow, I'll be feeling a little bit better. We'll see. But pray for me, please. We'll see you back here tomorrow, folks. Until then, may God bless you. May God bless America. And may God bless the great Lou Dobbs. See you tomorrow.